question.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Do you think then that this secret space program and Corey Good and all of these people are trying to get us away from the consciousness?
Well, they're talking consciousness. So there, a lot of these people.
They started now.
See, that's where that's why we talked about the thing of Messiah. So there's a couple new people who have come to me and said, "Oh, I'm talking to Ron, or I'm talking to somebody, and they give me a document, and they're trying to task me to hold this document or whatever." And I go, "Oh, you're the new Messiah." And that's what they do, is they take people who want to be on the inside. So people say, "Oh, if you got the offer to be on the inside and know all the secrets, who would say no?" And I went, "I did it twice." No, because once you're on the inside, they're not giving you classified material.
Right.
Anybody who's giving you classified material is going to jail. They will put you in jail. There's the one story told about the woman from the contractor from Georgia. Before they even published it, she was in the jail. They got her the same day because all these documents are tracked. They know exactly, and they actually leak documents where they make one little change of a word or a sentence or whatever. Because then when the document floats around, they can tell where you got it from because it's got the one little comma. You don't notice. So when this latest thing, Lou Alessandro's resignation letter was leaked. And they said, "Oh, yeah, I got Lou Alessandro's resignation letter, and it was the one they're going to give to the Senate." I go, "They're not going to release this kind of stuff. Give it to me." And then they gave it to me, and I go, "Come on, it's got no date on it. It meant they misspelled deferred retirement." And it's like, and they go, "Well," and they start defending. The messiahs will always defend. "Oh, well, their secretaries make mistakes," and they're trying to defend the fact that they're on the inside. And I say, when you're on the inside, be prepared to be used. So I'm not saying that these people are all totally. They may be told certain things, like Corso was an example. So Phil Corso was told, I want to read a book for my kids. I was involved in Roswell, and that's what Chase Brandon said. So Chase Brandon wrote this book called Christos Conundrum. And what the book is, it's supposedly the story of how the CIA handled Roswell. And he said that when he did it, it was reviewed twice by the CIA review panel. That if you're in the CIA and you want to release something, it has to go in front of them. So say, Trish, you saved the world. You had some atomic bomb and you determined it, you saved the world, and nobody knows. And you say, "Oh, my son, I'd like to leave this for my son." They say, "Okay, Trish, you can do it." You change all the names, you change all the dates, you fictionalize it. And that's what you do. You fictionalize it almost like the whole story with Bob Lazar. This movie's coming out right now with Bob Lazar. And I worked on the Bob Lazar thing when it was happening. So Bob Lazar has this whole thing. He sees the live alien. George Knapp tells the story. George Knapp says, if Area 51 is for real, there's this one guy that will know what's going on. So George goes and talks to the guy, and he said, he gets to know the guy, and the guy wired all the atomic bombs in the 40s, and then finally the guy invites him to his house, and he's going through the books and whatever, and all these bomb craters where they detonated atomic bombs, and then he says to George, "You didn't come here like a bomb craters, did you?" George said, "No, not really. I know what you came to see. You came to talk about UFOs." And then his wife says, "Oh, don't start talking about those stories." And he starts telling George these stories. And this is the thing, George tracked him down because he's the third top guy at EG&G that runs the Area 51. He said, "This guy will know." The guy starts telling him, and George says, "Well, weren't you afraid the story was going to get out?" And then this guy says, "No, not really. We were afraid it was going to get out." And George said, "What? You mean the story of the live alien is right?" And the guy said, "Well, we couldn't communicate with it." And George said, "It came across the galaxy and you kept this thing captive?" And the guy said, "Oh, we couldn't communicate with it." And then you suddenly have the movie Paul comes out, about the live alien that escapes from Area 51. So you start seeing how they're doing this. They put it in movies, they indirectly. So all these guys may have been in programs, or it may be the mind control thing, where part of their story is true, part of their story is false. Because a lot of them have positive messages where they're bringing this kind of stuff out.
Yeah, I want to tell you, there was a Native American who spoke about this being and about the guard that actually communicated with him.
Yeah.
And I met him. We didn't talk UFOs. He was Eddie Foy's son, Robert Foy.
Oh, yeah.
He was the one that guarded him and communicated telepathically with him. And I had a relation. I stayed at this place in Taos for a month, and he was a night clerk there. And we spoke about many different things, but we never spoke about aliens.
Wow. Linda tells an interesting story about the live alien. That there was I think this guy's a captain, the guy that would live with him or whatever, and the guy's dying. He's in Dallas or Houston. And so she gets this phone call and says, it's just like a spy movie. They said, "Okay, you've got 5 minutes. There's a telephone booth on the corner. If you don't pick up the phone in 5 minutes, it's off." And she'll go running down to this telephone booth, the phone would ring, just like, Get Smart, it's just on the phone. And the guy would talk to her, and this would go on for days. And she'd have to go to this telephone booth, they'd tell her where to go, and she'd only have 5 minutes to make it there, otherwise the deal's off. And she actually had bought her ticket. They went through this whole thing, and she was going to interview this guy. The guy was dying, and they were going to interview this. She was going to interview the guy. She had her ticket. She was flying. The morning she was going to fly to Dallas or Houston, or wherever it was, she got the phone call and said, the meeting is off. Click. That was it. So this is the way they do it. They put the story, so you get the story, they feed you the story, but then you can't verify it. So Linda tells the story, and you have your story, so these stories are out there, but nobody can verify the story. So you basically know what's going on. There was a live alien, it was this, it was that, or what they do, when I had there's a famous story about the Holloman Air Force Base story. And one of the people that was involved in this big document that I'm talking about, the guy who was doing the interview, was dealing with me, and he said, phoned me up one day and said, you got Jimmy Carter's phone number? I'm like, no, Jimmy Carter's phone number, Jimmy Carter's phone number. And he said, oh, I want to talk to him. I want to talk to him about the Holloman Air Force film. So this guy's got, there's this agent, the former intelligence agents, they got an association, and they're all like, you know, secret handshake, whatever, you know. They all know each other. So Ford and Bush were both part of this agency, so he had talked to them. But he couldn't, Jimmy Carter was not part of the association, that's why he's phoning me. I said, well, why do you want his phone number? He said, well, I talked to Ford and I talked to Bush. And they both confirmed the Holloman Air Force Base story was true. Because they were all looking for the film. The film was that the UFO lands, and Linda was given this as well, that the UFO was coming over the mountains, and it was going to land, and the door opens up, and these generals and people come, and they greet and it's all caught on 4 different cameras. 3 on the ground and 1 on a helicopter. They're filming this whole thing. And it's called the Holloman Air Force Base film. And apparently a 15-minute film is shown to the President of the United States. And one of Jimmy Carter's Secret Service agents said that he had been in the room and that Carter had been shown a 15-minute film of this landing. So he phoned up Bush, and he said to Bush, he said, did you see the Holloman Air Force Base film? And he said, yes, I saw it. And he said, did you see it as president in your presidential briefing? He said, no, I didn't see it, I saw it as CIA director. And he said, well, was it in A-12? Because there's all these counter stories. Was it in A-12? No, it wasn't in A-12. Was it a psychological operation? No, it wasn't a psychological operation. You're not going to tell me, no, I just saw the film. And then he phones up Ford. Ford says, yes, I saw it in my presidential briefing. And he said, so when was the presidential briefing? And Ford said, I'm never going to tell you where the presidential briefing was, don't even go there. And he sort of yells at him in the phone. So this film was taken, so Bob Emenegger, who actually put it in his film, part of it, I'll tell you in a sec, it says it was May of 1971. So Linda gets offered, she's doing an HBO documentary, and they want to throw her off, they want to kill the documentary. So Richard Doty invites her in April of 1983 and says, oh, we've got this Holloman Air Force Base thing, we're going to give it to you for the documentary. And so she starts negotiating, and the whole thing falls apart because HBO said, unless the president signs, unless we get this, the president signs that this is for real, we're not taking it, and the whole documentary falls apart. So Linda's, and Doty tells her, no, they got the date wrong. It's April of 1964. Bob Emenegger says it's May of 1971. So now it's me and Linda fighting about what's the date. Oh, you got it wrong, he lied to you, and we're fighting. And so they put the 2 different dates out. The story's true, 2 different dates. Because what happened with Bob Emenegger was, Bob Emenegger runs this thing, and at the very end, they give him the film. They actually have the film, and they've got it in LA. And then Bob says, oh, they phoned up, Coleman phones from the Pentagon, he says, you gotta bring the film back. It's Watergate, we can't release the film, you gotta bring the film back. And these 2 heavy-set people in a small Datsun are driving across the country with this canister in the back, and they take it back to the Pentagon. So I go, okay, fine. And then suddenly, someone tells me there's 8 seconds of the film in the documentary. So I look, and you can see it clearly. It's like this, because they had to do a storyboard. They pulled the film, so they had to do a storyboard. So they say, this may have happened in the past, this may have happened in the future, and they do this thing, and a recreation of this thing, and all of a sudden you see this break, and you see this object coming over the hill, and it's in a distance, it's a ball of light coming for 8 seconds, and all of a sudden, boom, and then they go, they're talking to radar guys out of the tower or whatever, and I go, that's true, there's 8 seconds. I phone up Bob and said, Bob, there's 8 seconds of film in the documentary. And he goes, yeah. And I said, you told me they took it back. Well, they did. I said, Bob, there's 8 seconds of film. Why would they allow you to use 8 seconds of the film? And he said, it didn't show anything. And it suddenly clicked to me. It's not classified. When it lands, and the aliens are getting out, and you're shooting close range, so that's classified. But there's just this object as it was coming over the hill, so they put it in, so that's the way they do it. They put a part of the film in, they drag you along, and same with Linda. So they tell Linda the story, and the live alien. Linda was offered an interview with the live alien. Bill Moore was offered an interview with the live alien. Whitley Strieber was offered an interview with the live alien. Bob Emenegger was interviewed with the live alien. And Bob said, oh, that's just garbage. I mean, that was garbage. That was just a thing. And I said, well, who told you the story about the live alien that you're going to get the interview? He said, Paul Charlotte. And I said, was Paul Chartle reliable? He was the security manager in our Air Force Base that ran all the films. Yeah, he was reliable, and I said, so he's the one that offered you the live alien. And they did it, all these people started telling the story about the live alien, and they pulled all the interviews. So that's how they do it. It's this gradual thing. It's to control it, because once you spill the milk, you can't put the milk back in the jar. They could stand the president or the CIA director up and tell you what's going on. So they do this indirect thing, partly true, partly false. They put people in who have been in the programs, and whether you do a mind control or you're told to change parts of the story. So it's so complex. It's like a minefield of trying to figure out who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth and what's going on. Yeah.
Thank you.
Dave's got a question.
Okay.
Well, you know you're familiar with Michael Lee Hill
Yes.
and the NSA and that haplogroup, the Bloodline,
Yes.
and the Lake Erie UFOs.
Yes.
What is going on with that? Is this plane
He's one of the guys I believe. In fact, it was.
I believe him too. He's just.
Yeah, I mean, he talks for hours. I mean, he absolutely
Right.
believes, and he's the son of Eric Clapton. You were just showing us Eric Clapton's house, and they're just on a cruise, and Eric Clapton wrote you see the synchronicities. Eric Clapton wrote the music for Communion.
It's just fascinating, the whole thing. It
Yeah,
just blows my mind.
but Michael Lee Hill, I mean, he talks about the guy from the Rolling Stones.
Right.
The guy that opened for the Rolling Stones for a whole year.
Right.
I mean, this is the guy that's really into this thing. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, Desta and I interviewed him for hours,
Yeah.
and I've talked to him numerous times, and I absolutely believe
Yeah, his whole Native American connection, the whole thing, and
Yeah.
the Sundance, and everything.
yeah, he's one of he's not really a whistleblower, but he's one of the guys when, I really don't understand what he's saying most of the time, but, because it's so complex. But there's no doubt, he tells, I've heard the story numerous times, he tells exactly the same
Yeah,
way.
it's really amazing. I think you can listen to it again and again and again and get more out of it.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. And he's the guy that had the UFOs, so the rumor is that Eric Clapton's an experiencer, and he's an experiencer.
All right, thanks.
So it's almost 4:30, one more question? Okay.
Thank you, I have to go. Nice
What are your thoughts on the Schumann resonance?
Absolutely important. This is an event you're gonna see talking about where, thank you, sir. Okay, thank you.
Great.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Yeah, I was actually thinking about this morning. I was walking this morning, I was thinking about this. You're gonna see this thing, there's a lecture that's taking place at Harvard University on the 30th this month. The guy that's giving the lectures is Gary Nolan from To the Stars. If you know, he's one of the members of To the Stars. He's a geneticist from Stanford University. He's an experiencer. So when you listen to experiencers, like, he's not in it, to work for the government or whatever. He's trying to figure it out himself. He's giving this thing, they're trying to go open with this thing. He's going to talk about the antenna. About inside the brain, there's the antenna. But again, they're trying to make it back to this physical brain thing. Oh, there's just this thing in the brain, and it's this physical thing. And what I say is, I have to listen to his lecture, but I think half of the story is, it's the brain, but it's also the Schumann's resonance. I talked about this rapid image cycling thing, the Cadillac for cancer cures and stuff like that, where they do this thing where they teach you to do this thing where you flip these images and whatever, and they've actually wired up people. So they've wired up the healer and the person who's being healed. The interesting thing is, and they've actually got these on charts, when the person is doing the healing, at a certain point, there's a boom, and both of them are in sync. Their brain waves are exactly in sync, and it's either Schumann's resonance, double Schumann's resonance, or triple. It's like a harmonic of Schumann's resonance. And so the Schumann's resonance is part. It's not just the brain. It's tapping into this Schumann's resonance, whatever it is. And the other thing is that when they did the experiment, where they started to learn this thing about the brain, it was done at Laurentian University in Canada. And this guy said he invented the God helmet, where he knew where the God was in the brain or whatever. And he talked about, they had Ingo Swann, who was one of the top remote viewers. They had him on there, and they had him wired. And they said when he hit the targets, he was in Schumann's resonance. So when you get a psychic impression, you're in that Schumann's resonance. You're tapped into this field, this 8.67 or whatever. So Schumann's resonance is very important. And what I think they're going to do is they're going to skip the Schumann's resonance thing, and they're just going to talk about the brain, because what they're trying to do is show, oh, the brain is doing this, and it's creating this thing, and it goes back to the physical. I say the brain is just the receiver, and you have Schumann's resonance, and you have the field of knowledge. So Schumann's resonance is very important, and I think I'm going to do some more research on it. I think that's an important road to go down, is This whole idea that everything is resonating around the earth at this frequency. And they're all psychic people, according to this research done in Laurentian. When they hit the target, they are in Schumann's resonance.
Well, I hear it keeps increasing, like the.
Well, not according to the stuff I've seen. Yeah, I know that story, but the stuff I've seen is, especially when you get into the whole, and even if it does, I mean, it's still the idea that it's some sort of resonance that has very much to do with paranormal phenomena. That, you know, especially with this, if you see the one, I have a paper that I have a paper that's on, I'm going to put on my website. It talks about this whole Schumann's resonance and this rapid image cycling. Because the other thing is, this rapid image cycling, and this will be the last thing we'll go, show how weird this stuff gets. So rapid image cycling, I'm trained to do this thing. Flip, there's 1,000 images in your head, and you're sitting there, and you've got them on a clock, and the clock is spinning, and you spin it faster and faster and faster and faster, and all of a sudden your hand starts to heat up, and this heat's coming through. So suddenly, there's another documentary called the Aerial School. You know, if there's 62 kids at the Aerial School in Rhodesia, these kids are there, this UFO lands, and these kids are getting these messages in their head. And the one girl is from Hamilton, Canada. And the shiver just went up my spine when I heard her lecture. She's talking about, she says, and I'm there, we're running along these logs, me and this other girl, we're running along these logs, and she sees flash. And all of a sudden she looks beside her, and there's this alien, and he's levitated, but he's imitating them. He's sort of levitating, he's beside them. She's looking at this alien, and all of a sudden, boom, the alien's in front of her, and they're frozen. And then she said, suddenly, it's like, these images coming in her face. Rapid image, and I'm going, that's rapid image cycling. It's the same thing that's used in the Bengston method to cure cancer. It's the same process. And I'm going, what's the chances? And I tried to interview her, but they're trying to protect her. She's all stressed out or whatever. I said, it's only one question. How fast are the images going? So she tells this story, and she's getting the technological images, and she starts doing these paintings. She's doing 100 paintings. She paints all these things with these symbols, alien symbols and stuff like that. And she said the message she got was, you have technology, but you could do better. And the girl beside her was getting these rapid image cyclings as well. These messages coming, it was coming from the alien's eyes. These images coming at a very high rate. And hers was environmental images, that the world, you're destroying the world and this sort of stuff. So there's that. And then I listened to Susie Hansen, who's from New Zealand. She tells a story. And you see how this all connects. She's telling the story. In February of 2010, I think it was, we were taken to a theater. And there's 200 to 250 of us. The beings took us to the theater. We were sitting in this theater, and she said there was a big screen there, and all of a sudden there was an environmental image. Flash, 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 flash. And she said, and suddenly there was 100 images or more a second, and they had trained us how to do it. And I'm going, that's the Bengston method. That's this rapid image cycling thing. And so when I look at Bengston, I'm going, this has got to be something too. So I said to Bengston, actually during the thing, I said, you didn't invent this thing, did you? There was Bennett Merrick. It was this psychic guy who was able to heal people and was able to determine what was wrong with you. He had all these abilities and made clouds disappear. And Bengston was a sociologist. He's trying to figure out, how does this work? How do you do this? How do you heal people? And he's trying to figure out how this works. And the guy says, we'll use this rapid image thing. And so he writes the book about how this Bengston method started, and at the end he says, oh, I got this, Bennett Merrick, and Bennett had a real tough time at the end of his life. He actually believed he was an alien from Alpha Centauri. I knew he was. So you see these connections, like what's the chances you're going to get this rapid image cycling that keeps popping up all the time that you can't, it's like, people say, well, you just made it up. Well, who's going to say, oh, I think I'll just flip a couple thousand images in my head and I'll cure cancer. That's not something you think up. That's something that somebody gives you. That's not something you decide one day you're going to, because it takes a lot of training, weeks of training to learn how to do this at that speed. So I'll leave it at that, and we'll go for lunch.
Yes. Oh,